Hello and welcome to Action Radio. This is Greg Penglis coming to you from the historic district of downtown Milton on the banks of the beautiful Blackwater River. And now let's get into Action Radio. Wow, so much is going on. I've been preparing a lot for my interview in the second hour with Jarome Bell. It's going to be fascinating to talk to him. He's running for Congress. I've been watching his videos, reading all kinds of stuff from his website. And this has been a couple of interesting days. We had J. Anthony Sanchez yesterday, and I prepped a whole lot for that, reading all his positions and stuff. And he was running for Congress, but he's got a website too. So it's interesting the people that are coming out that you don't hear about, and until they're huge. And it's really nice to be able to talk to these folks in advance and hopefully have some
right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me welcome to the show Jarome Bell. He's running for Congress. He was in the Navy for 27 years, Chief Petty Officer. He's got all kinds of what we call the classic conservative views, but has some really interesting things to say on a video recently. So, Jarome Bell, welcome to our typical Tuesday feisty debates, from our
Is he back on?
Let me hold you up just for a second. Yes, Jarome Bell. After that great introduction, too. Are you there now, sir?
Yeah, hi. Hey, sorry about that. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing fine. There we go. I know you were listening a little bit earlier, and again, Tuesdays get a little crazy around here. We've got Gene, our producer, on, and Josie, our Latino reporter, is on as well. Do you have any reaction to what you heard so far? And then we'll get into your congressional campaign and background and all those good things.
Oh yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it's always good to listen at this vaccine conversation. And I would just tell Shelby, if she's still listening, she needs to look at the new Israeli study that says our natural immunity is better than the vaccine, and that comes from Israel, who has vaccinated over 95% of their population, and they're having a resurgence of COVID, whether you want to call it the Delta variant or whatever, and all of them have been vaccinated. So people really need to look at things outside of the United States, research outside of the United States, because we don't get the truth because of Big Pharma. And as far as the FDA is concerned, every drug that every drug that has been pulled off the shelves by the FDA was once approved by the FDA. So you can't really trust the FDA either. And if you really want to know some other things about the FDA, Dr. Fauci's or fascist, or however you call him.
Dr. Fascist. Yeah, feel free. You can take that.
Yeah, his wife actually sits on the board of the FDA that approves vaccines. So
what a surprise!
I mean,
it's family business.
It goes very deep. It goes very deep, and really all you have to do is follow the money. I like to hear these people talk about follow the science, and then these are the same people that tell you there's more than two genders. So,
I knew I was going to like having you on the show. I'm really happy that you're here. Well, let me ask you this, sir. It's great, yeah. But you've been in the military 27 years, so I don't know if you were there. I'm trying to think. Gulf War would be 80s. That'd be more than. Well, I'm just trying to think. Do you remember the anthrax vaccine and Gulf War syndrome? Remember that whole problem?
Yes, I actually was still in the military, in the Navy when they started the anthrax vaccine, and at the time I was deployable and we were going over to the Middle East and whatnot. So I was actually part of the people that actually started the vaccine trials, and I say trials. I got one shot and I had a very bad reaction, and so there are hundreds of thousands of other military people that had the vaccine, and after that, we as a collective, I mean, it was thousands. We were walking away from careers because we were not going to take any more of those vaccines, even though they were mandatory. We were just going to walk away. And a couple of years later, I think maybe in 2004, I believe it was. 2012, 2014, somewhere around there. There was a case, that was brought up, and Judge Sullivan actually, and this is documented and this is precedent, he said that the vaccine was illegal because the military could not mandate that military personnel get an experimental vaccine that was not approved. And that's what was happening. This vaccine was not approved. And so then that's when the military shut down and stopped giving this vaccine to the military after the judge put a stop to it. And this is the same thing that's going on right now with this COVID vaccine. I mean, you have these other countries. You know, like I said, I do a lot of research, and I really watch other countries to see what's happening. And you can see over in Africa, there's really not any COVID in Africa because
we've talked about that.
People, you know, ivermectin. Right. I mean, right. You guys definitely talked about it, but I guess Shelby hadn't been listening, or she doesn't really read outside of the USA, because there are studies, and it's worldwide. India, who has by far a bigger population than the United States, have been giving their people ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and they don't have nearly the COVID that we have here in the United States. Why? Because they don't have an FDA. If you look at these other countries that are doing well, you know, look at Vietnam. Vietnam didn't have hardly any COVID, right? So you look at these other countries that are doing well, and you know, in response to what's happening here in the United States, and you find one common factor: none of them have the FDA. None of them have big pharmaceutical companies that line the pockets of congressmen and congresswomen who use insider trading to line their pockets with the FDA. People have to understand that the FDA is created by Congress, and the FDA cannot approve anything without the approval of Congress. So, you know, it's a whole big conglomerate. This is why we have the high healthcare costs here in the United States versus other countries, because of the big pharmaceuticals. And also, these vaccines are definitely causing. If you look at, I have a graph, and if you look at the charts and you look at when COVID, because COVID basically had died out. COVID was gone because a lot of people actually had caught COVID before they caught it. People were catching COVID in November.
Where'd you go?
October, November of 2019, and they didn't know what it was. They were just telling people it was an upper respiratory infection. People were getting it, and people were being cured. They were.
Did you go off speaker or something? We're having. Hold on. We can't hear you. You've gone up. You're either on speaker, off speaker. Or you hit a button on your phone. I can't hear you as well.
Until they came up with this scary word of the change of the flu, basically, and called it COVID, because they knew something was man-made. And so now with the vaccine, once the vaccine started, the mandatory, and people started taking these shots, you see a drastic uprise and a drastic uptick in COVID patients. Right? During the original pregnancy, during these
Okay, now you're back. Your phone cut out there. I mean, you were really, really quiet for about a minute. I mean, you missed what you were saying. Did you hit a button or something, or what happened?
No, I didn't. I'm actually in my car because I'm traveling, so you still hear me, right?
Must have been a bad cell area then. Yeah, so if you just go over a little bit about the last 30 seconds of what you're saying. I don't want, because it sounded great from what I could hear. Yeah, but I want it on the record.
Okay, yeah. What I was saying was once the vaccine started, you see a big uptick and an uprise.
Right.
And the COVID, and now with the vaccines, you're seeing more and worse hospitalizations off of this, because you didn't see that they told you these hospitals were full when the original COVID came around, and that was a lie. I actually went around and videotaped a lot of these emergency rooms. There was nobody in these emergency rooms, and my son's a doctor. He's a doctor down in one of the biggest cities in America, and that's down in Atlanta, and he works in one of the biggest hospitals. And during the uprise of COVID, the height of COVID, I called him. I said, "Hey man, are your hospitals full with COVID?" He said, "Dad, we got like 18 patients in the hospital," and that was it, right?
Yeah.
And so
we should get him on the show.
With this, and no, he won't come on the show. And now,
okay, fine.
And now with these vaccines, now these hospitals, and now they are becoming full because of this Delta variant that's being given off of these vaccines. And also, Shelby should also go and check out the new CDC report and the reports from Israel again that says the people that are vaccinated are 251 times more viral than anyone that catches COVID naturally.
Yeah.
So
Well, Sheldon makes a really good point, though, that people believe their illusions. They believe their delusions and illusions. They believe their assumptions. They are fear-based, and the fear, and what I wrote down here earlier, fear, delusion, assumption, lie. It's their fear leads to these delusions. These delusions lead to wrong assumptions. These assumptions lead to living lies. It's a scary thing. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because we've got so many issues to cover with you, sir. But I want to get, in terms, I want to get Josie and Jean to be able to ask you questions also. But in terms of what you can do as Congress, and just to make it clear, because we sort of introduced you kind of haphazardly, Jarome Bell is running for Congress, I think, the 16th district in Virginia. Where exactly are you running from?
No, it's the 2nd district.
Second district, okay.
Yeah, right, Tidewater, Hampton Roads area, the Eastern Shore.
Okay.
Williamsburg City, that York County, that area.
So, what can you do as a member of Congress about this? How would you change the FDA, the way drugs are authorized or approved, or just the whole, even the healthcare system? If you want to go into that as well, what can you do, or what are you proposing?
Well, I'm getting with Trish from New Jersey. And we're actually going to unroll our health care plan. But one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to get more. We're going to get more practitioners involved, hopefully within the healthcare system, and basically go around and try to alleviate and get rid of basically the FDA. More countries, what other countries do is that these doctors and these providers, they actually put, and President Trump was actually trying to go down this road with, mandating that these doctors and these hospitals put up a price list of what their prices, of what their services cost. And when we do that, you drive competition, okay? And what we want to do is bring in these providers and really get off of the government pit, if you want to say, as far as providing health care through the government and opening it up to citizens at a lower cost. Bringing in competition, bringing in drugs, and being able to get these other medicines from outside of the United States, outside of the purview of the big pharmaceutical companies and the FDA. So what we would do, what I would want to do in Congress is hopefully sponsor a law and make some laws that says that if you're an American citizen, a free American citizen, you can get your drugs, you can get your medications from anywhere around the world and make it legal to where it may be beneficial, may be low cost to you, to where you can afford it and you don't really necessarily have to go through the medical system, and also make it law to where these doctors and these providers can also do the same thing, so they won't be pressured into having to push this poison and push these medications, these supposed cures and these treatments, which they are just treatments. They're not cures, through the FDA and the big pharmaceutical companies that basically just keep you sick so they can just keep making money. And also I want to make law that says naturopathic medication and naturopathic doctors are legal. So if you want to go the natural way of curing your disease or natural way of treating yourself, it would be legal to do that, and these doctors won't have to be fearful of being put in jail or killed. So that's what I would want to do.
We have a couple of associates here, the friends of mine of the show, Dr. Zelenko and Dr. Judy Mikovits. So, we have past shows with them. So if you need information, I can get you probably connected with them. Maybe they can help out and be a good source, or just listen to our shows, with them on. I mean, so we're here to help you as well. We're advocates. This is not a journalism show. This is not an impartial show. We take positions. We advocate. I want to go to Josie and then to Jean. See, and it doesn't have to be on this topic, but pretty much any topic you want. Josie, do you have a question for Jarome Bell?
I don't have a question, but my opinion is I think the government needs to get their hands out of our health care.
Okay.
They got enough to do that they don't have to get involved. And the other thing is I'm surprised that the health care companies are not coming forward and say it is time to stop all these vaccines, because you know what? They're going to end up paying for a lot of these medical bills. So I'm surprised, unless they're getting a kickback already and getting all this money. I don't know if you know that.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about vaccine liability. There's no liability on the vaccine manufacturers. We've written our own bill here at Action Radio, because that's what we do. We have an entire department of citizen legislation, which I'm hoping to inspire you, if you're interested, to incorporate into your campaign. But that would be one of the first things I would think, could be addressed, is restoring full product liability to big pharma, especially vaccine manufacturers. Sorry?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I don't believe these big companies should be immune from something that don't give immunity, okay? Because these vaccines don't give immunity. Yeah, I think they need to be held responsible. And, and when they do that, they're just off the hook, and I believe that's wrong. I believe people should have, one, informed consent. Okay, if you don't have informed consent, and that's complete knowledge of what's going into your body, okay, then you should be able, and if you get sick, then you should be able to sue. And I believe that anyone that has gotten ill from the vaccine should be able to sue the person that gave it to them, their company that allowed them to give it to you, give it to them, and did not give them informed consent, because there is not any, let's follow the science again, there is not any informed anything on this virus. COVID has not even been isolated enough to even call it COVID. That's why there is no test for the Delta variant, because they cannot isolate a variant off something that they haven't isolated in the first place that truly doesn't exist. Right. So a lot of this is fraud, is fraudulent, and I believe people should be able to sue.
Well, how about excellent? I mean, I agree with you completely. What about the Federal Trade Commission? If these folks are giving false and deceptive information, advertising, they're saying that we have an approved vaccine, yet it hasn't been manufactured yet, and probably won't be for another 3 years, if at all. That they're passing off the emergency use authorization original Pfizer vaccine for the original SARS-CoV-2 that doesn't exist anymore. It's gone, and I think it was gone back July 4th of 2020. I call it COVID Independence Day. That's when the CDC had the death rate going pretty much to zero, and then of course they boosted it up and changed the numbers and everything else. But the whole point is that the Federal Trade Commission should be involved in stopping this, even if it means stopping the FDA. Can we bring them into this?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that they have the obligation to stop it as well. I'm on board with that 100%, and they should also be liable for allowing fraudulent information to be disseminated into the public. Because, like you say, unfortunately, a lot of people do trust the news, and they do trust what the government says. But unfortunately, they shouldn't. Even though I'm running for a government position, but I'm running for a government to hopefully be one of the truth tellers and instill faith back into the government by allowing truth to be known again and to be said again, and not by this corporate media that's held by only six companies, that's ran by 6 companies, and all they do is just continue to repeat the same thing over and over because they're complicit in this as well.
Well, you're definitely one of the good guys, and it's nice to have you running for office, and so I really appreciate it. But they're going to get after you. You upset people's illusions, you upset their assumptions, and you really walk into a firestorm because they'll take their assumptions to the grave rather than challenge what they believe. I want to bring Gene in, then I got a totally different question for you, sir. Gene, did you have a question for Jarome Bell?
Yeah, but first I just want to say thank you for getting the information out there and what you're doing. But also, why do you want to run for office when you see what's going on? And especially someone with your viewpoints, it's like, why? We need people like you, but why?
I mean, I actually get that a lot, and probably because I'm half crazy. But I spent 27 years, almost 3 decades of my life defending this country and defending what this country is supposed to stand for. And that's the Constitution of the United States, and that's being naturally free by God's law. I raised 3 boys into men, and, I want to leave them the country that I actually grew up in, because this is not a racist country. We have racism in this country, but there's racism on both sides. I know some of my family are the biggest racists that I know, and they're black. So,
we talked about black supremacy. This is an equal opportunity show. I had a Black Lives Matter guy call me a racist, and at the time we had Josie and Pianki, who's black, on the line, and Josie's Latina, and I was the only white guy on the show. It's like, where's the racism, pal? I mean, it was hysterical. Anyway, go ahead, but feel free to speak freely, because we do.
Yeah. Well, if anybody know me, anybody follow my Twitter, anybody follow me on Facebook, that's why I'm suspended on Facebook again, is that I do talk freely and I don't really hold my tongue back. And, you get the truth of me. I am what I am. Either you're going to love me or you're going to hate me, but at least you're going to get all of me. And so And so, this is the greatest country in the world. This is where I was born. This is where my family was born. This is where I raised my kids. And this is, I've gone all over the world. I've been on every continent. I've been over, in over 500 countries and cities all over this world. This is the best country in the world, no doubt. I believe Shelby did say that, or one of them said that. So she was definitely correct on that. This is by far the best country in the world. And this is the freest country and the last free country in the world. So if we lose this, no one has anywhere else to go. And I know that's a cliche, and a lot of people use that, but it is definitely the truth. And so I'm running to try to preserve that. I'm running to try to bring this country back to where it should be, to where to what the founding fathers instilled it to be: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with no interference from government at all.
Yeah. I was watching your video last night. These are all good points. I was watching your video last night with Stu Peters, and you made an amazing claim that I want to kind of follow up on. You were talking about American lives sacrificed to the globalist and to the permanent war class, the military-industrial complex. And you mentioned that we knew about Pearl Harbor in advance. We knew about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. I mean, the destroyer, I think it was the Greer, was purposely put in harm's way to be attacked. We can go back to, remember the Maine, in Havana Harbor with the Spanish-American War. But I want to start with Pearl Harbor in particular. Why do you think we knew about that, and how does that affect, what's going on in Afghanistan? We'll sort of work our way up there, but that was a fascinating claim that you made. How do you know that? I'm curious, especially Pearl Harbor.
Well, if you study the story of Pearl Harbor and the story of World War II, you find that the Australians warned us. We had communications, and we picked up communications as well. And the Australians warned us that there was a large Japanese fleet heading towards the west coast of the United States. And we ignored that, and we totally ignored that. If we would have took them serious, and if we and I don't know if we didn't take them serious or if we just let it happen, because how do you get this close to the United States and not know about it? We have the Navy, we have so in my studies and in my research and in my readings, I found that those communications were had, and we either ignored them or we let them go, or we just let it happen to get us into the war. Because you have to understand, it was at a time when we were also coming out of the Depression, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're right.
We were trying to recover from depression, and the best way to recover from a depression is to really go to war and spend money and start manufacturing things and getting people back to work. At that time, so that's why. I put out that and they put up the accusation that Pearl Harbor, basically was sacrificed. I mean, we had all those ships, just sitting on the row, and just let them get bombed, so we have to manufacture new ships. We have to bring new ships. It's going to, bring back the economy. It's going to, so you have to look at all these different factors into what really goes on into war. And also, we ended up, and people may or may not know that we funded both sides of the war with Germany as well. We manufactured a lot of the tanks and a lot of the equipment that the Germans used that we were fighting against.
Was it Ford? Ford was making German tanks, right. I think, before the war. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely, they were. So I mean, so war. And when you really go into it and you come forward and you you really look at the studies and you really listen to President Dwight Eisenhower warn us about the military-industrial complex, and then you just really look at it and sink into it, then you find that, it's actually pretty plausible and pretty feasible that this happens, and especially the way that the globalists now, they want the New World Order, they want to control people, so when you study globalism and the globalists, and that was one thing too. If you notice that President Trump was trying to get us off, he was trying to get the United States off of globalism to maintain our own, whether you want to call it isolationism or or
I don't like that term.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But,
America first
so,
is a better term. I think.
Right, totally America first. He was doing some things. He had got us out of the WHO, which he knew was a criminal organization, and everyone now sees what the WHO is doing. They're in bed with China. A lot of these globalists are in bed with China. So you have to look at everything as a whole, and to be able to understand it as a whole and see, how these things work and intertwine together. So that's why I say, I mean, and if you're looking at moving up to Afghanistan, what idiot in their right mind would not take out American citizens first before we take out the military? We give up an air base, we just let it go, and all of these tanks, all these guns, all these missiles, and we just leave all this equipment there and just turn it over to the enemy, okay? And then we, allow, we pull out the military before we pull out the civilians, and then we close the military base, and then, none of it made sense, these people talk about what was President Trump's plan. Well, that was not President Trump's plan, because you can have a plan. It may have been President Trump's plan, but you can actually execute a plan wrong and have it all screwed up. So, but what Biden and the administration did, they tried to just get rid of everything Trump did, and he wanted to do it his way. But, whoever's controlling him, they wanted to do it their way, because President Trump's plan was to get out all the civilians first, get out all of the equipment, and then bring the military out. Yeah, no one wants perpetual war. I don't want perpetual war, but fine is that, with all of this loss of life, Pearl Harbor, you have 9/11, you have Vietnam, you have all of this, right? Now we have Americans that are stranded and that was left there, even though, they tried to spin it and they started to spin their cover their ass, lie as to how they said, well, the people that want to leave, the Americans that want to leave, we're going to rescue. Well,
I want to leave,
all
right?
The Americans want to leave Afghanistan. Yeah. So you see, they knew that they were leaving people there. They knew they weren't going to get them all out. So now, the lie is going to be, well, those people didn't want to leave because we got out every American that wanted to leave. No, you didn't. You left stranded Americans there. And I feel for the Afghanis, and I feel for our allies and the people that helped us, right? But I'm in America first. Every American should have been on those planes first. We pulled out only 5% of Americans. If you look at the total, it's over 100,000 people, and most of my Afghanis that we pulled out of Afghanistan. Only 5% of those were Americans, and we know for a fact that there were thousands of Americans that were over in Afghanistan working, and so now, people are going to see this death. We had the death of our 13 service members. People are upset and angry. People want to go in there and get Americans, and the best way to get back into war is to get Americans fired up, because Americans are killed, Americans are sacrificed, because we love each other. We love our country, and we love our American citizens, and we don't want any harm to come to any American citizen on foreign soil. So, in that aspect, you have to sacrifice them to get Americans' stomach ready and to get Americans fired up to buy back into war, and that's what's going to happen in Afghanistan if you pay attention here soon.
Yeah, no, this is why I thought your revelation was brilliant, and I want to sort of trace this through. And 9/11 we can talk about at some point. I don't want to do it today, but the idea that building, the airplanes crash into the top of a building and it is destroyed from the bottom, is just illogical on its face. And we'll talk about that sometime in a bit. But Afghanistan, I'm going to ask you a question.
Follow the science on that one. Follow the science.
Oh, yeah, we will. We've only got 27 minutes left. Right. I have a bunch of other issues. Josie, go ahead. Yeah, real quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say my husband's retired 26-year military Air Force H-60 helicopters. And my husband says that we were well trained, he was saying last night, that when we leave, we destroy all our weapons, anything left behind. This is well organized. In my personal opinion, and my husband, Obama is the one behind organizing it all with Ilham and the Muslim Brotherhood. This is well organized to leave Americans behind.
That's the point I wanted to get to.
This is all an agenda.
Yeah, if it was done purposely, let's look at it in terms of it being done purposely. What is the objective? I also believe, as Josie does, that Obama's running the Biden, insurrection, as I call it, that they're helping the Taliban by giving them our weapons. They're bringing Afghanis so we have more Sharia Muslims in this country. This is all by design. And like you're saying, to get us back into war. So kind of feel free to explore those things, sir.
Yeah, I believe it was definitely by design as well.
Okay.
Because you have to look at it. The people in Biden's cabinet, they aren't stupid. People calling them stupid, they are not stupid, and they are not ignorant. And, these were the same people that were in the Obama cabinet as well. So these people are very intelligent people. So you just have to come to the conclusion is, okay, so if they're not stupid, it has to be by design, and it has to be by design. That's the only logical conclusion that a sensible, critical thinking person can actually make. And yes, we never leave equipment behind. I mean, we left, $83 billion of equipment to the, Taliban or whoever is going to be using it against us when we go back in there. But yeah, we destroy. I mean, even when they say we killed Osama bin Laden in that 860 crash, we blew it up so no one could get it. If we didn't have the means to get all of our equipment out, which we did because we had the C5s, we have everything. Before we left Bagram, we could have flown all of that equipment out very, very easily, on our planes. But yet we left it there. And if we were going to leave it there, then you might as well just drop a tactical nuke on it and blow it all up. But you don't leave it to the enemy,
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
well, why was it there in the first place?
It was by
we had 2,500 troops there. Why did we have $83 billion? I mean, $83 billion is like 10% of the entire defense budget, about $800 some odd billion. Why did we have that much stuff there for 2,500 troops?
Well, it was troops stationed close by too. I believe that because Bagram was basically a big staging area, just in case we had to go back in, just in case we had to have a quick response. So that's what Bagram was. Bagram was a secure air base. I've flown into Bagram a couple of times before I retired. But Bagram was a very secure air base. It wasn't downtown, on Taliban land, like Hamid Karzai is. It was a secure perimeter. It was very secure base because it was out, away from pretty much everything. So it was a secure base. So that was an outlying post, and that was a, staging and a quick response area. So I can understand why a lot of the equipment was still there just in case, but I don't understand why it was left.
Yeah, I think it was there. It was built up as a gift, or it was there to justify the next war because we have to go in and spend more money to buy more stuff so we can fight our own equipment. Gene, do you have a question? And then Josie, do you have a question? And then I have another, of course, many big ones here.
Oh, no, I don't have any questions.
All right, Josie?
No, I'm good. I want to hear him.
Okay, sir, when should the United States go to war? Let's get a general policy here. If you're in Congress, what are your criteria? When do we go to war?
Well, and personally, I think we should go to war when we have a threat upon the United States shores. And you can, go further out. And we do have those. We have, international waters that anybody can travel through. But once you travel into, our area of operation here inside the United States, or if there's any, and I believe, we do have our allies, that we protect still and that we work with. And I understand that may be, part of war when you have treaties to protect each other. But unless there's a actual, deemed threat upon the United States, then, I don't think we should go to war, for any reason other than that, to be honest. Because I understand,
would you require a congressional declaration of war? Would you bring that back?
Yeah, well, that's the way. That's the way it's laid out in the Constitution. The President of the United States should not.
It's not done that way.
Should not, have, carte blanche just to, go to war. The Congress, the Constitution of the United States gives Congress the power to declare war, and that's it. And that's the only way it should be.
Yeah. I want to switch to another thing you mentioned earlier, talking about racism. It seems to me that the Democrat Party has always been the party of slavery, the KKK, segregation, up through Obama, who was the resegregation president. And its official government policy, especially in the Department of Education for things like critical race theory, what can you do, in Congress to get us away from that? Because this is not, a racist country, as you said. Are there racists in this country? Sure. Yeah. But the point is to make it official government policy to segregate everybody, based on race. This seems one of the most destructive policies that was ever created. And we need to reverse this and get out of this whole race business. Sir?
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, the first thing I would do is definitely I'm going to sponsor a bill to abolish the Department of Education. I think the Department of Education is a waste of money, and the federal government should not be involved in education of states. They should be a state level, institution only, so the states write their laws for their education system. And with that said, then the people can be able to control it even more, because there's no federal money coming into the states. There's no federal money coming into the coffers of these teachers unions or anything of that nature because it's state run. So when something is state run the way it's supposed to be, and not at a federal level, then the people control that better. And down at the localities and and at the state level. So I would definitely abolish the Department of Education and remove education back down to the state levels. And I think, if that's done and people aren't getting federal dollars and federal mandated curriculum and things like that, I think the people can control that better.
Yeah. What if you got rid of all public education? What if we were an entirely privately educated nation where people could get vouchers for full school choice? So their taxes went to vouchers where they could pick homeschool if they wanted to create a homeschool, if they wanted to go to various private schools, if they wanted to have a mix of everything from ballet lessons to archery to academic classes to Shakespeare, and they sort of modulated their kids' education. Do we need the government involved in education at all?
Well, absolutely not. I mean,
Okay.
Our tax dollars are spent on free public school education because that's in the Constitution. Now, with that said, I believe that money should follow the child. If a parent wanted, and I do definitely believe in 100 choice and with vouchers if necessary, and those vouchers would come in the form of the taxes that the people are paying to these public schools. If you don't want your child to go to a public school because that public school is failing, or you want them to go to ballet school, or you want them to go to an art school or something, that they, would thrive better in a different curriculum or a different setting, then that money should definitely follow the child. And you should be able to have a voucher for that and use that in any form of education that you want your child to be in.
Yeah. Did you say education was in the Constitution?
I mean, well, I believe it's Title 10 or Title 9 that guarantees a free and public school education. But that comes, at the expense of being federally mandated as well. So, if a person, because education should be free, first of all,
Okay.
and if we have public schools that are being funded by state governments or by any government, then a child should be able to go to school free. But that curriculum should be also set by, and I would say a board of parents, a board of educators, a board of legislators, to make sure that all of this curriculum is fit for children and not something that's fit for adults, like this sexism, all this crap that they bring into the education system now. But if we're paying for it, then yeah, I believe that, and it is written in that children are entitled to a free and public school education. So.
Yeah, see, I would change that.
I got a quick question.
Yeah, Josie, go ahead. Yeah, that's interesting.
I got a quick
Josie?
question.
No, feel free.
In the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, our governor, he said it's optional if you want to get the vaccine and no more masks. Now, our public schools here are demanding all the children and teachers to get vaccinated, and they want all the kids to wear a mask. What can I do? Who do I get a hold of? I mean, because, Ron DeSantis' office, they never answer. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's relegated down to the local level, even, and in the state level, and me personally, if I don't believe that it should be mandated, because mandates are not laws, first of all. Mandates are suggestions. Mandates is someone's tyranny that, where they think that they're king and they can just tell free people what to do. I don't believe in that. I don't believe there should be any mandates. Now, if there should be, a choice, because we are free people, we should have the choice. So if you want the choice to get vaccinated, then get vaccinated if that's what you want to do. If you want the choice of your child to wear a mask to school and your child wants to do that, then do that. But if you don't, there's no way in being free will people and having our inalienable rights from God that anybody should be mandated to have to wear a mask or get a vaccine to attend school, especially a public school that's free and public, and that's where it goes back to the free and public school education. So do
you think they're breaking our laws?
here?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. I absolutely do believe that they are breaking our laws, and I absolutely believe that anyone that mandates that, any business, any governor, any school board, they all should be liable for any damages to these kids, and also believe that they, should be held accountable and that they are liable and should be sued as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Just to follow up. No, those are great questions, Josie. Just to follow up on this, the Biden insurrection is telling states they're going to cut funding, and they're going to tell, and they're giving extra money to school districts when DeSantis wants to cut money to them. What's going on at the federal level? You've got an imposter in the White House who's imposing his will that you should be vaccinated, you should do this, the unvaccinated are a plague on society, or whatever he's saying. But the point is, in Congress, there are a lot of things you can do, and a lot of this comes from the CDC. Because the CDC, as you said, they're issuing, regulations which people are taking as mandates, but they're not. They're suggestions. The CDC has no power, no regulatory authority to do any of this stuff, yet people are taking it. So what would you do with the CDC?
Well, I would admonish the CDC, because the CDC does not make laws. No one in the CDC is an elected official. Only elected officials can make laws. Only legislatures can make laws. So for any mandate, and that's where it goes back to. People need to understand law. People need to understand, terminology and what's coming out. A mandate is just a suggestion. A mandate is not law. And the CDC, in defense of the CDC,
it's not even a mandate.
They have actually, they have actually said this is just a mandate, in which it is, or this is just a suggestion, and they say it in their literature. And if you look at words like shall and must, the words must and shall are very, very critical in law. If something does not say must or shall, then it is only an opinion and only a suggestion. And if you notice, if you look at any of the literature that the CDC has released, they say it's a suggestion or should. They use the words should, and we recommend, that you wear a mask, or they should wear a mask. It doesn't say that you must wear a mask. They don't say that you, have to, or that you shall wear a mask, because they know law, and they understand that those words are very, very critical to law. So, and if you look at, let's say here in the state of Virginia, right? If you look at any of Ralph Northam's, Blackface Northam's mandates, quote unquote, right?
Oh yeah.
His mandate. If you read them, you will see those key words in there. Should, recommend. We're going to follow the CDC recommendation. Absolutely, because they're only recommendations, which means they are not laws, which means people really don't have to follow them. And then he also protects himself by giving a list of exemptions. And he lists every exemption in there that could conclude that you really don't have to do any of this, because somebody falls under each one of those exemptions. But what he does, he put his black shirt, his brown shirts, and his the Department of Health, Nazi fascist policemen out there to try to police this. And they actually know they don't even have the law on their side to police this. They didn't have the law to shut down businesses, for this, because you can't shut down a business on a recommendation or a suggestion, because that's all of this is. See, but people don't understand linguistic programming. A lot of this is linguistic programming, where you hear a word and you're like, oh, that's law, that's mandatory, when it's really not, because people don't really understand the English language, and they don't understand what these words mean and law perspective to them. None of this, I've never worn a mask. I'm never going to get a shot, because it's all relative, because it's all recommended and it's all suggestion. None of it is law.
So where was the GOP during all this time? Where were the objections? Where was the national press conferences daily saying that you don't have to listen to this? This is a bunch of nonsense. Republicans at every level, from Congress, from the governors, there could have been such a massive counter media effort to counter the lies that were coming out from the CDC, the lies that came out of the FDA, the lies that governors have the power to lock down their states, which they don't. The Constitution doesn't have an on and off switch. I'm surprised Bianchi hasn't called it. Actually, that was his line. He said, you can't do this. None of this stuff was legal. And yet, where was the opposing media? Where was the opposing party? And I've started calling the GOP the gelding old party. Okay, they're a bunch of geldings. They don't do anything. They're like horses drawing carts. They're passive as opposed to stallions that range free and yell and scream and do stuff. What happened at the party, and why weren't they more active? And then we'll get into the election audits too. But what's happening to the GOP? What can you do with them?
Well, I think we have to rebuild the GOP. Unfortunately, a lot of the GOP are rhinos. We have rhinos that, capitulate, and, that's also part of this plan. They're getting paid, by these same companies, that's pushing the vaccines, as far as the media, the opposing media are the ones that were silenced, are the ones that were taken off Twitter, taken off Facebook, and can't, really get out there. OAN was actually a good one. OAN has always been against it. They're always been against these illegal mandates, but everybody don't have OAN. You have to, either have cable to get OAN, in these alternative news sites and these news outlets like, where Newsweek was good, Newsmax was okay, but OAN has been front and center. That all of this has been that these mandates have not been law. But like I say, a lot of people don't get those. A lot of people get the control. Fox News, and yes, Fox News is controlled, just like CNN, just like the rest of them. They're owned by the same people. So you're only going to get half truths, on Fox News, where they're not a reliable source anymore, at all either. But there were some GOP members that was coming out, like Rand Paul is now coming out against the vaccines, that people say they shouldn't get the vaccine. So some of them are now trying to come out, but a lot of them were scared, and a lot of the GOP politicians are just worried about getting reelected.
Yeah. I'm so glad you came on the show, and you're welcome anytime. You don't even have to get an invitation. If it's something we're talking about you're interested in, please feel free to call. And I want to get you on many times before the election so we can explore these issues, because we at least have the time to do that here. Speaking of things that people don't have to follow, the Supreme Court, I guess the most recent and a series of horrible decisions coming out of there, and they're actually opinions. Roe v. Wade. People follow Roe v. Wade, but the Supreme Court has no ability to make policy. Therefore, Roe v. Wade actually is moot. The fact that the Supreme Court said that there's gay marriage, they don't have the power to create that. That's moot. All the other things, a lot of the other things they've done creating so-called rights, they don't have the power to do any of that. Congress could easily say, look, you can't do this stuff. Plyler v. Doe, the case that we're working on here, when we're trying to create an illegal alien-free zone in Santa Rosa County, is a case that says that we have to educate illegal alien children in our schools, and we have to pay for it. Why are we funding a criminal enterprise? Why are we giving foreign aid within our country to people that have no right to be here? So the Supreme Court is a huge issue, and Congress, is supreme over the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court issues opinions. They don't make law. They don't make regulation. Have you thought about things that you can do with them to put them back in their box of Article 3, basically handling cases instead of making up stuff?
And, that's one of the things of having the separation of government. They are just supposed to interpret. And like I say, they're not supposed to legislate and make laws from the bench. That's not what the Supreme Court is for. So reining them back in, I definitely would be on board with legislation for that. But you really can't legislate another branch. Government, they are just.
No, but you can overturn their decisions. If you make a law that changes the decision.
I don't know. I mean, well, I don't believe Congress. I mean, I honestly don't believe Congress has the power to overturn a Supreme Court decision, because we are separated, and that's why it's separated. And the Supreme Court is supposed to follow the Constitution now of the United States. And I mean, get into the weeds of. And I don't think the Supreme Court should, and these courts should have the right to sue the President of the United States, because we have separation of government between the Congress, the President of the United States, and the Supreme Court, and that's the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be a check and balances system, but it's only a check and balances system when you have honest people within the system, when you have integrity within the system, and that's the problem. We don't have integrity within the system any longer.
Yeah. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I'm really curious to explore this a bit, because I think this is one of those assumptions and myths, and we talk a lot about this on the show. And I'm way out there when it comes to the Supreme Court, because I want to put them back in a box and give them just very minimal authority. But what is the check and balance on the Supreme Court if not Congress and the President? The branches are checks on each other. But it seems like if you can't challenge a Supreme Court decision, then there is no check and balance on the Supreme Court. That's my question.
Well, you should be as part of the Constitution. Okay. You should be able to check that over time. I've never known any part of Congress or President to ever overturn a Supreme Court decision. Because basically the Supreme Court is supposed to be the fair law of the land, and they're supposed to adjudicate according to the Constitution. Do they do that? No, we don't now, because they're outside of their own box. So yeah, I mean, do we have to rein them in? We have to rein them in at, somehow, as far as that goes. I don't know, I don't know how we would do that except confines of the Constitution and putting in justices. Again, that, I'll put it like this. I would like to get rid of the lifetime appointment, probably. That may help.
Well, there is no lifetime appointment. The Constitution says good behavior. You can do that. Congress can do that anytime they want. They can recall any justice of the Supreme Court for bad behavior.
Right. Yeah. Right. But bad behavior, and then you have to get okay. So what is bad behavior? What I mean? Is it something?
Roe v. Wade, gay marriage.
Because
making
writing,
laws.
Just because of writing opinions, things like that. So yeah. I mean, I'm on board with you. I agree with you 100%. Now, as far as the procedures, of exactly what Congress can do to overturn anything. I mean, of course, we can always write, new amendments to the Constitution. That's the way, that Congress normally would handle things like that. And that's why we have all these amendments, right? So I think there may be new amendments that may have to be added to the Constitution in order to rein in the Supreme Court on a lot of their cases that they may have made. So that may be one way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, here's the thing, too. You don't have to have, answers to every question I ask, because a lot of times we ask questions that can't be answered until we've studied them, we've thought about them, we've debated them. Right. Supreme Court is a regular topic on this show. And so I would love to work with you on that because, I have some fairly strong views, and I think that that is definitely something that people are really concerned about. I want to go to Gene and Josie again because I have one more question on election audits. So we'll get to that in just a bit. Gene, do you have another question for Jarome Bell?
No, I don't, but I just want to say thank you because here where I'm at, it's being mandated that people in healthcare get the coronavirus vaccine or you're out of a job. Mm-hmm. And I need to look farther into where it's going to say with nursing homes federally that if you're not mandated, they're going to cut off funding. But what you said, it just makes me more motivated to speak up in behalf of no, that should not be legal because who is making that as the authority last sentence, and it needs to be challenged. So just thank you for all your information.
See, I would abolish just to follow up on Gene, I would abolish the CDC. The only legitimate power they have is to stop people at the border who have a communicable disease from coming into the country, and Homeland Security could take care of that. We could abolish the CDC, take away their one power, and I think we'd save a whole lot of grief. Josie, do you have another question? We got about 3 minutes left. Oh, go ahead, Jarome. I'm sorry. Yeah. Hold on, Josie. Let's get Jarome.
Said that before. Yeah, I've actually said that before that we should definitely abolish the CDC because they've outlived their usefulness, and now it's just used, as by the government as another a strong arm tactic organization. There's a lot of organizations I would abolish within the federal government in these places that seem to be federal government establishments, but they're not, like the Federal Reserve, the IRS, and things like that. I would abolish a bunch of that.
Okay, all right. We can talk about those. Let me get to Josie's question first, then I want to ask you about the FBI and the audits.
I don't have a question,
Josie.
But I just want to thank you so much for running and thank you for your service. And we need good leaders in Washington, D.C., and it is time to clear the swamp that we have. It is horrible, and this is not America, what we have right now. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate you.
It's great to have you on. Even like I say, even if I disagree with certain things, don't take that as a lack of support. I want to help and I want to sharpen the arguments and I want to see what I can do well, of course, there's some citizen legislation I want to talk about too. There's my 90-second warning. So what do you think of the idea? I don't know if you had a chance to check out some of our bills like vaccine product liability, like the Section 230 amendments that we have written, things like not having income tax withheld during the time you're earning your standard deduction, things in our now 23 bills, to rock the nation. Have you had a chance to look at any of those? And what do you think of the idea of citizen legislation, of us writing the bills that we consent to be governed by and then giving them directly to Congress instead of special interests always doing it? What do you think?
Okay, well, I have not had a chance to read your bills. But just listening at a couple of things that you said, I would be interested in definitely reading those and researching those, and and I don't want everyone to agree with me, and I don't agree with everyone else, So if we have a disagreement or we don't agree with anything, that's fine, because that's how we learn. I'm willing to actually listen and sit down, and I may learn something, as far as something that I may not know. So I'm not a know-it-all or anything like that. But yeah, as citizen legislation, that would actually be a great thing, because I think, a lot of these localities and a lot of the states, they need citizen input, because, the fact of the matter is we legislate for, why would we not want the citizens' input as to how they want to be governed? I think that would be definitely a smart thing, because here's the thing: if you read Frederick Bastiat at all, you read his essay called "The Law." The law was created to protect individuals' life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are supposed to legislate, and meaning we, every legislator and congressman and senator, in the federal and state governments, we are supposed to legislate by that one premise. If we pass a law, or we are attempting to vote on a law that takes away a person's life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, then that law is unjust and it should never be passed. Anyway, the law or the law enforcement was created to protect individuals' rights to that. And if those law enforcement people don't enforce that, then they are unjust and they should not be in law enforcement. So there's a real fine line.
I have to hold you up.
So.
No, I have to hold you up. We're actually out of time. We've been out of time for about a minute, but I really wanted to hear this answer, because, you've made my day. So let me just conclude. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to definitely have to have you back, but just give your information, contact information, websites, emails, anything like that, and then we're going to have to shut down for today. Sir,
okay,
how do people get in touch?
I appreciate you having me. Definitely. We'll definitely be back on the show so we can finish. We have a lot to discuss. But but my website is JaromeBellForCongress.com, and you spell that JaromeBellFor Congress.com, and that's where you can volunteer to help my campaign. You can donate. If you can't volunteer, or if you don't have the time, but donations are greatly appreciated, because everyone knows it's expensive to run a race, especially when you're running against establishment Republicans and Democrats like I am. You can follow me on Twitter until they suspend me again, at Jarome Bell VA. I'm usually on Facebook, but I'm suspended right now again for another 30 days because they can't take the truth. I'm also on Gab at Jarome Bell VA. I'm on Getter, Jarome Bell VA. I'm on IG, Jarome Bell for Congress. I believe that is. I have so many, I lose track. But that's how you can get in touch with me. And my email is JaromeBellForCongress.com. And again, you spell my name Jarome, so you can also reach us there.
Okay, thank you, sir.